Okay, we are live. We're live. How you doing, guys? Welcome back to the channel. It's been a while since I've posted anything. I've just been super busy. But going into a new year, I thought, what the hell, let's kind of start again and see where we go with it. One of the things I wanted to talk about today is basically the new transmitter box and the new NANLINK app from NANLITE. I work for NANLITE. I am basically the European and UK marketing manager. So I understand everything about this and have previously done presentations with my colleague Alvin to the Facebook community and other social media platforms. But I thought I'd make a separate video on my own YouTube channel because there's quite some technical information that we didn't cover during the launch, because not a lot of new users are going to need to know that information. But I thought it would be good to take a step back, explain why these technologies exist, explain why we've made these decisions, and then hopefully that will help people make a decision whether or not, you know, Pavo tubes, Forzas, mixed panels, all of these products that can be interconnected through the NANLINK app is the right choice for you. So without further ado, I've got a PowerPoint presentation I'm going to work through and just explain how that all works. So obviously it's the NANLINK app. This is a piece of software that is compatible with Android and iPhone. So it's an app you'll download, and also it will be available for iPad too. So you'll download this onto your device and it will give you the ability to connect with your lights, and in turn that gives you the ability to control them through the mobile phone. Now, in terms of controlling lights on set, there are a few different kind of wireless protocols that you can use. There is Wi-Fi, there is Bluetooth, there is 2.4 radio frequency, there's infrared, there's, you know, that's an older technology, but there's loads of different ways you can connect to a device. History has dictated one of the best ways to connect traditionally was through radio frequency. And the reason this is because radio frequency is very fast, and that's why it's used for a lot of flash transmitters, because as soon as you push that trigger on your camera, the radio frequency sends a message and the flash goes. Flash is super fast, so it needs a relay that's just as fast. If you were to use Bluetooth for that, or you were to use Wi-Fi, obviously with the bandwidth and the delay in terms of that communication, it isn't as responsive. So that's why historically most brands have used kind of wireless transmitters, so radio frequency wireless transmitters. If you are working top-end video production on a film set, most of those protocols are done over by what we call DMX, and that's basically a hardwired solution which would allow you to connect to a DMX console and then in turn connect to all of those lights. So as an example, think about a stage where you've got an artist singing or doing a performance, and you have a sequence of lights doing stuff in a randomized pattern or in a sequence of patterns. They will tend to be controlled via DMX, and they're hardwired because that's a robust system that doesn't really have any kind of like shortfalls. It's a very guaranteed way to produce good stuff, to produce good looking stuff with lighting. Now, the thing with DMX is it's quite expensive and it doesn't filter down to a lot of the other technology. So manufacturers have had to use different ways to connect. And also with DMX, you can integrate things like what's called lumen radio. And what that will effectively do is take your DMX signal, transfer it wirelessly through a lumen radio system into the console. So there is a way to create that to disconnect that hardwiredness, and that gives you control through apps and stuff like that. You don't often see it in kind of cheaper, more attainable products. You tend to see it on big film sets where there are kind of infinite budgets to be able to produce these things. So in terms of kind of what the application gives us, you know, we've got a whole host of things, and there should be an image on there as well. I don't know where that image has gone, but it will give you the ability to control the CCT, the HSI, which is the hue, saturation, intensity, control effects. You can create groups. You also have a quick on, quick off, preset recreation, and a console mode. So there's quite a few different features within the app that will allow you to use it. Oh, there we go. There's the picture. I forgot to push the slide. In terms of how it looks, so you can see here that we've got the CCT mode. That's going to give you the ability to control the bicolor option if the light has that. And what we mean by that is going from, say, for instance, 2700 Kelvin all the way through to 6500, you know, and that's a warmer color all the way through to a cooler color, and also controlling the green and magenta shifts that sometimes exist within, well, not sometimes, all the time exists within LED lights. We also have the HSI mode as well, and the HSI mode is basically allowing us to control that full spectrum of color from within the application. And then obviously the special effects. So this is creating, effects that we tend to see that are created with lighting. We get to recreate those with the application, which is, I think, is pretty cool and a must-have feature, on most modern lights, because you don't just want a light that goes on and off. You want a light that can do multiple functions, which in turn will convince the viewer that this is a real situation, and therefore kind of seed them deeper into the experience of what you're trying to portray from an artistic perspective. In terms of like some of the other features, you have what's called groups. So we can group lights in scenes. And what that means is, if, for instance, I had a scene where 2 of the lights at the back, I need to operate those independently from 3 of the lights at the front. I can group the ones at the back in one group and control those together simultaneously, and then the separate group at the front, I could then create a separate group and control those simultaneously as well, and also interlink those as a group and control them all as one, which I think is a great feature to have. We have search and engage, which is a great way to kind of like look at the whole system, look at all the lights that you have available to you and choose specific things. And I think that's a really good feature to give you full control over all of the lights that you kind of set up on this set. If you've got one light, of course, it's easy to do, but if you've got multiple lights, it's great to have that oversight of everything that's going on and being able to control them all individually as well as grouped. Cool. Store and recall. So we have a way to basically store presets and recall those. So for instance, if I tend to be, I don't know, doing like interview video lighting, I use a 3-point light setup, maybe a Forza 60, a Forza 150 and a Pavotube X or a Pavotube C. I can create a preset that I can go back to time and time again. And what that allows you to do is quickly get onto set up, shoot what needs to be shot, and then go away. If you have to keep on setting up every time and kind of redoing all the lights, and it can take time. So anything you can do to shorten that process is going to make you, more valuable as a creator, because you can turn the work around a lot quicker. Now, in terms of how this works, this is where I wanted to go into the technology and detail a little bit more. So in terms of how it works, this system uses what we call a Bluetooth and a 2.4 dual chipset. So it has protocol for Bluetooth and it has protocol for 2.4 radio frequency. Now, previously, this was our box. So this is the box we had before that just focuses. Cool. So this is the first rendition of our box. This is the CNW2. Now, this box here had, you can see at the top here, if it there you go, you can see that it's got a DMX interface there, it's got an Ethernet port, it's got a load of different ways to connect. This uses 2.4 and Wi-Fi. Okay, and that's because back in the day when we were kind of creating these bits of technology, we didn't realize that Bluetooth was going to be kind of like the all-seeing connection pathway for mobile devices. So we had Wi-Fi and we had 2.4. Also, Wi-Fi network is a faster network, so it's easier to relay information. So that's why that was chosen. But as time progressed, Bluetooth has become more and more popular. So that kind of meant using the Wi-Fi has become less popular. Also, the other thing with the Wi-Fi is not many mobile devices have dual Wi-Fi chips. And the reason you would need a dual Wi-Fi chip is so you can have one to connect to the internet and then one to connect to this closed network that will allow you to control these lights. Because what this effectively does is your phone would connect to this, and then the lights would connect to this, and then through an application on your phone, you'd be able to control it as part of a closed network. Now, the problem with that is most phones only have a Wi-Fi protocol connection. So that means once you connect to it, you then can't get onto the internet or do anything else. So your phone is part of this closed system just to be able to control the lights. That's great if that's all you want to do, but lots of people want to go beyond that. Say, for instance, you want to do a firmware update, because you can't connect to the internet, you can't pull that firmware off to be able to interface with the lights and do their update. So that's why we've created another solution. We've kind of got rid of this. This is gone, and the solution we've gone for now, as I explained, is this one here. And that's basically the Bluetooth and the 2.4 as opposed to Wi-Fi and 2.4. So hopefully that made some sense. This will still work, and understanding it as it does, you can still make good use of it. If you've got an old iPad and one of these or whatever, and you just wanted an iPad just for controlling your lights on set, then of course you can create that closed network and do it, and it'll work just as well. So that it does still have use, so if you have got one of these, it's not totally redundant to you, but we do have a new technology that supersedes this and kind of takes care of all the shortfallings that we've realized this now has. Cool. So in terms of our responsiveness, the app is super responsive, you know, so as soon as you dive into it and start playing with stuff, it responds immediately, which is great. And it uses that Bluetooth to connect with the lights and just gives you easy control. You can see from the picture here, we've got a range of channels set up with different lights, all at different temperatures. And you can see we've got a 15x, we've got a 30x, we've got a 60x, a whole range of devices connected. And we can see those from this console layer, this oversight of kind of everything. We can switch stuff on, take power up, take power down as and how we need it. So imagine you are a gaffer on set and your director says, okay, I need to, you know, the hair light, it needs to go up a little bit or it needs to go down a little bit. On your mobile phone, you can just pull it down or up and away you go. Or you need to kill the key light, switch it on, switch it off. So that's why those features are there, to kind of make it as easy as possible. If you're a one-man band and you're shooting portraits and stuff and you do a 2-point light setup, you know, rather than walking around to the back and kind of changing stuff on the light manually, you can just do it from your mobile phone. So if you were shooting tethered, you know, next to you got your mobile phone, you're all tethered, you've got your computer, your whole setup is ready to go. And then if you need to change anything, say for instance, you're shooting a range of people and somebody comes in with slightly darker hair, slightly darker features, and that soaks up all that light, and you need to kind of bring the power up to compensate for that, you can now do that from the mobile phone. So that's where that would come into play. Cool. So in terms of compatibility, this is an overview, and I'm going to need to get rid of me for this part here. This is an overview of what devices have 2.4 Bluetooth, 2.4 on its own, or just Bluetooth on its own. So over on the left hand side, you can see the Forza. So the 60, 200, 300B, all of these are dual. So they have 2.4 and Bluetooth. So what that basically means is all of these devices with a firmware update, they will be able to connect directly to the application. So all of that stuff on the left hand side, when the firmware update for the specific lights come into play, you'll be able to update those and they'll be able to connect directly. What they also have is 2.4. So when we start talking about our transmitter box later, what that will mean is you can also use the transmitter box to kind of interface those with other older lights or legacy lights to kind of get everything all connected into one setup. So you have the benefit of both 2.4 and Bluetooth. Going forward, everything will probably just be Bluetooth. Some of the more higher end products, they will probably have, like, you know, Ethernet, they'll have DMX, they'll have all these other features. But for more kind of like the baseline products, I'd imagine Bluetooth is the way to go. And that's just because that's the more favored protocol. 2.4 was popular with strobe, and that's why it was adopted. But as time goes on, particularly with LED, it's less needed because you don't need that instant response. Whereas with strobe systems, you did need it. So that's why that kind of still exists. So all of this stuff on the left-hand side has both. Then we look at the stuff over on the right-hand side, and the stuff on the right-hand side is basically the Forza 60, 300, 500, the mixed panel 60, 150, the LumiPad 11, the original series of the Pavo tubes, which is the 15C and the 30C, our Compact 200, Compact 200B, and then our SA kind of studio broadcast panels. So all of those have 2.4. Now, what that basically means is that 2.4 that's like that wireless sort of radio frequency. Now, these devices will not be able to connect directly with the application, okay? And that's because you need Bluetooth to do that. So we do have a product, which is our transmitter box, that will act as a relay, basically, for those. So what that will do is you've got your devices with 2.4, you then have the transmitter box, and then you have your mobile device that has the Bluetooth. Transmitter box connects to this via Bluetooth. Transmitter box connects to this via 2.4, creates a open network, well, a closed semi-open network, which allows you to communicate with all the lights that are on that network, and then also be able to pull information from the internet, such as being able to do firmware updates and all those sort of things, provided the specific the specific light has the ability to do so. Some of the other lights, they will not be firmware updatable just because of when they were manufactured. That wasn't something that was incorporated into that, whereas the newer ones, they will do. I need to get rid of me for this part here. And then down in the bottom right is a few products that we currently have at the moment, which just have Bluetooth. Now, this is the Lito Light and the Mixpad. As you can imagine, after everything I've explained, these devices will connect directly with the mobile phone, okay? You don't need to worry about 2.4 because they're using this Bluetooth radio frequency. They're using this Bluetooth as opposed to radio frequency. Cool, so hopefully that explains the connectivity. Now we move on to the transmitter box, which is this guy here. If I can show you that, if that will focus, get rid of my face. There we go. So this is the WSTB1. Now, if we look at the two bits of technology, we've got these two devices here. So older technology, newer technology. You can see it's got smaller. Therefore, the footprint is smaller. It's less expensive as well. So this is less than $100 in most places, in all places, because that's our RRP. And what this has is 2.4 and Bluetooth. We've got rid of the Wi-Fi in this. The reason being is everything I've explained before. Bluetooth will allow you to connect to smart devices and then be able to relay to devices with the 2.4, which is some of our legacy equipment. Going forward, most stuff will just have the Bluetooth. So if you are a customer that's found yourself with PavoTube 15C or 30C or the original Forza range, this is a device that you have to have. You know, for less than $100 or less than £100, go out and buy one of these. Add this to your equipment, because what it means is your NANLITE or NANLUX like ecosystem will all be interconnected into the NANLINK application. And what that's going to give you the ability to do is to create these advanced networks, these advanced scenes, and control all of those lights easily. You wasn't able to do that before. And the reason you wasn't able to do that before is 2.4 is a very rudimentary kind of connection. It's one way. Okay, so think of it like a remote control. So most remote controls use infrared. They send a single beam of information that's received, and that gives a command to the device, such as a TV. 2.4 does exactly the same. It sends a radio wave out with information that's received by a specific device on a specific channel, giving it a command. The device can't communicate back. It's a one-way transmission. Okay, so the radio frequency control sends a command, the device does the command. You can't have a relay back, whereas with Bluetooth you have a two-way exchange of information. So you can share information, you can take information from the device, you can embed information into it, and you can communicate with other devices on those networks. So Bluetooth is way more advanced in that sense, because it's a two-way communication protocol as opposed to a one-way, which would be older technologies such as infrared and 2.4. So hopefully you understand that technology. So this is 2.4 and Bluetooth, as I just explained. So you've got this 2.4 chip and then you've got this Bluetooth chip. They work together to create a connected protocol over the two technologies. This is effectively a translator. This understands two different languages and allows those two different languages to merge as one to give commands and control to the user. That's a really good analogy to understand what this does. And then in terms of how it operates, it has an internal antenna. So you can see nothing hanging out of the sides of it, which is great. So that makes it easy to use and control. There's not bits and bobs hanging off of it. And this will allow you to interconnect with all of your devices. In terms of battery power, so you've got a 2,400 milliamp battery, which is going to give you approximately 15 hours of runtime. Now, that is quite a bit of juice to kind of do some controlling of lights on set. You're not going to continuously shoot for 15 hours. Stuff will be switched on and switched off, which is going to give this more kind of like legs long term. What you do also have is a USB-C input, which will allow you to connect a battery to it. So you can also connect a power bank or something along those lines. So you can extend that 15 hours, and you can also charge it very conveniently. So if you're on location, there's no power points and you're struggling to give this a charge, you can use a USB-C output power bank, and this will charge this back up. So you can connect all of your devices and kind of run those quite easily. In terms of some of the key features, you can see here it's got a 1/4-20 at the base. That will allow you to connect to most stands. It's also got a clip here, which I think is super useful. It comes in this handy bag here. My advice to anybody is, if you are using this out on set, is pop this in here with the little catch that's on there. So that guy there, just clip that, just clip that to wherever you need it to be clipped, and just leave it as there. The material around the bag isn't going to interfere with the communication protocols and cause any delays. So that's probably the most convenient way to use it. Also, with the USB-C input, it will allow you to do firmware updates. So there will be some new firmware updates, which will allow us to improve its features and kind of like refine those. If there's any bugs we need to kind of sort out, we can do that. And a battery indicator on the top as well. So it's really well designed, and if we compare these two devices, so this is older technology, this is newer technology, you can see it's really kind of like changed in terms of what it's got, what it doesn't have. And this older one, this more archaic system is, it's got antennas at the top and stuff like that. It's an older piece of technology, whereas this is modernized and designed to work with our next generation of lights, but also incorporate our older generation of lights. So nobody who's, you know, made the decision to commit to NANLITE is lost. You know, we've not said, you know, it's older equipment, we don't want you to connect. We want everybody to connect, you know, whether new, old, whatever it is, we want the whole ecosystem to connect and also go beyond that. So if your career progresses and you get onto bigger and bigger scale jobs, and before you know it, you need an Evoke or you need a dyno, you can integrate this into that as well, all through the NANLINK app, which I think is a really thoughtful innovation from a company as ours. Like, it makes me really proud that we've taken those decisions to make sure customers, whether they bought into us 5 years ago or they're buying into us now, are all able to connect and use the whole host of features available to them. Cool. So in terms of some of the features that you can cover, I'm just going to switch back to this. So if I just go through these quickly, in terms of the app control, if you've got a daylight light, so say for instance, you have something like the Forza 60, that's daylight. So it doesn't have the ability to shift between color. Okay. So that will be set at 5,600 Kelvin. In terms of what you can control through the app, you can dim it, you can control all the effects, and you can create presets. You can also function some of the special features through groups. If you then look at a bicolor unit, such as the Forza 60B or the 300B, you can control the CCT, so control the power up, power down, how bright it is, but also the color shift within it. You can also control the special effects, and you can also create presets as well as controlling all those special effects. If you are using a full color, which will be an RGB or an RGB-WW device, such as our PavoTube 6C, our PavoTube 15C, our mix pad, our mix panel, all of those devices are a combination of like RGB or RGB-WW. This is going to give you the ability to control power up, power down, CCT, gamma, magenta shifts, if they do exist, also green and magenta shifts if they do exist, or if that function exists in that light. And then also you can control the special effects as well. So, you know, the app's going to give you the ability to dive into all of those features across all of those product ranges, which I think is really good, because, you know, we're not limiting the usage to simpler devices. So we're not saying, oh yeah, just because it's a Forza 60 with no, like, with limited functionality, we're not limiting that. You've got the ability to control everything, which I think is pretty cool. And then finally, the last little thing that I have to cover is firmware updates. Now I'm going to switch out of this and close that off. So in terms of firmware updates, because the application came out, the application and the transmitter box came out after a lot of our devices were launched, such as the PavoTube X, the PavoTube 6C, the mix panel, the Forza 60B, the Forza 300B, just to name a few. These devices came out before the app and before the Wi-Fi box. So what that means is you need to do a little bit of reverse engineering to a certain degree, and you have to do firmware updates on those devices to be able to make sure they can connect. Now, in terms of how we do the firmware devices, you go to our website when the firmware is available, you download it, you move that onto a USB device, whether it's USB-A, USB-C. You make sure that the stick is formatted to FAT32. You make sure the software or the firmware is the only piece of information on there, and it's sat on the root folder. And what we mean by the root folder is when you look at a USB stick, if there are multiple folders, all of those sit in the root folder. It's the first folder you see when you go into the stick. So move all of that information off, format it, and put the firmware on there as the first thing. That allows the device to pick up on that firmware when it's plugged in, and then proceed with the firmware update. Once you've done that, what I would recommend is, if you've got the ability to reset the wireless protocol, do a reset on the wireless protocol, and then you will be able to connect. If you are using just a Bluetooth only or a Bluetooth 2.4, you can connect directly with the NANLINK application. If you have a device that only has the 2.4 and no Bluetooth, such as the Forza 60, the Forza 500, the Forza 300, what you will need to do is obviously use the transmitter box, which we've explained. So hopefully all of that information is kind of covered, the reasons why we've done what we've done, how we go about doing it, what devices are compatible. And yeah, I hope that's really kind of answered some questions. It's been really fun talking about it. I love these really deep technical aspects. If you have any questions about them, please do pop me a message in the thread down below. Always happy to help. My singular piece of advice to anybody that owns any NANLITE equipment, go and buy one of these. It's really that simple. And unfortunately, you have to go and buy one of these. And the reason being is technology progresses. Yeah, there is always a point in time where there is a new technology that eventually is going to be superseded. And at some point, you have to create a bridge between those. That takes investment, it takes research, it takes manufacturing. You know, we've done that. And this is the equation. You know, in terms of the cost for this is very cheap for what it does. And I think if you are going to make a single investment into your NANLITE equipment or your NANLITE ecosystem, this is the one for you. Cool. Well, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel if you thought it was useful. Hit me up with any questions, and I look forward to producing another video really, really soon. Take care. Bye-bye.